Before Meghan Markle was a Duchess, before the Oprah interviews and the Netflix deals, she was Rachel Zane, the stylish, sharp-tongued paralegal who quickly became a fan favorite on Suits. For a lot of people, this was the Meghan they first fell in love with. Confident but relatable, ambitious but warm, and always ready with that half smile that looked like it was hiding a secret. Suits gave Meghan her breakout moment, the kind of role every working actress in Hollywood dreams of. Suddenly, she wasn't just another struggling name on a casting sheet. She was the it girl, the one who made legal drama look glamorous. It was more than just acting. Rachel Zane's pencil skirts, quick comebacks, and won't they chemistry with Mike Ross helped shape a whole aesthetic for the show. Viewers didn't just like Rachel, they wanted to be her. And for Meghan, it was a career-defining chapter one that she would later point to as proof of her grit and determination. She often framed this period as her origin story, the proof that she had worked her way up, that she had earned her place in the spotlight through talent and hustle. But here's where things start to get interesting. That carefully polished version of events, the scrappy actress making it big, is now being put under a microscope. Because while the public saw a rising star on screen, insiders suggest a very different reality was playing out behind the scenes. Whispers of icy moods, power plays, and social games have begun to bubble up. And as Suits surges back into popularity on streaming, so do the questions. Were Meghan's Hollywood beginnings really built on kindness and resilience? Or is the story far more complicated than the one she's been telling? Just when it seemed like Meghan's Hollywood chapter was sealed in nostalgia, along came Lady Colin Campbell, a name that makes royal watchers sit up a little straighter. Lady C isn't just any commentator. She's a social hurricane in pearls, famous for dropping the kind of stories that ripple through both Buckingham Palace and Beverly Hills. Love her or hate her, when she speaks, people pay attention. And this time, she wasn't dissecting royal drama. She wasn't talking about tiaras, palace feuds, or who sat where at the coronation. Instead, she turned her sharp gaze backward to Meghan's pre-royal days on the Suits set. According to Lady C, those years weren't the Cinderella chapter Meghan has packaged for the public. They were something closer to Mean Girls. Legal edition. She claims she's spoken with more than one cast and crew member from Suits, and the stories all seem to circle the same word. Mean. Not diva, not difficult, but mean girl. The kind of energy that could light up the camera with charm 1 second, then go completely cold the moment the director called cut. Allegedly, Meghan had a way of sizing people up in seconds, deciding who mattered, who didn't, and making sure the room felt it. Now, coming from anyone else, maybe these stories would have been brushed off as idle gossip. But Lady C carries weight. She has a reputation for digging into places others won't, and for surfacing details that insiders recognize as uncomfortably close to the truth. Her claim wasn't just that Meghan was tough, it was that she ran the Suits set like a one-woman monarchy, building inner circles, freezing out outsiders, and reminding people exactly who held the power. And that framing is dangerous for Meghan, because her entire post-royal brand, empathy, kindness, resilience, depends on the opposite narrative. If the cracks in that foundation keep widening, the whole carefully built image risks collapsing under the weight of contradiction. The stories coming out of the Suits set don't sound like the dream come true that Meghan has described in past interviews. Instead, they paint a picture of an actress who allegedly treated her big break less like a blessing and more like a throne. According to multiple accounts, Meghan wasn't just another member of the cast, she positioned herself as the center of the social universe. Crew members claim she had a way of making the entire atmosphere shift the moment she walked into a room. If she was in a good mood, it was laughter, smiles, inside jokes. But if something set her off, you didn't need to be told. You could feel it. The temperature on set dropped instantly, and everyone scrambled to stay out of her way. One insider even joked, you could set your watch by Meghan's silent treatment. When she was upset, whole hours could pass in chilly silence, and everyone knew it. Then there was the alleged inner circle. Meghan supposedly built her own little court on set, a group of favorites who got the warmth, the eye contact, and the charm. But if you weren't in that circle, forget about it. Sources claim she would barely acknowledge you, making it clear who belonged and who didn't. This wasn't the behavior of someone just focused on her work. It sounded more like a high school cafeteria, only with scripts and camera crews. And that's where the contradiction really begins to sting. After stepping into the royal world, Meghan has worked hard to sell the narrative of being the misunderstood underdog, the woman who rose above negativity with kindness, empathy, and resilience. But if these stories are even half true, then she wasn't the victim of toxic behavior in Hollywood. She was the toxic behavior. That flips her entire image on its head. Instead of the actress who fought her way to success with grace, it suggests she climbed with sharp elbows, using power plays and cold shoulders to stake her territory. And for someone who has built a multi-million-dollar brand on compassion, that kind of contradiction isn't just awkward, it's dangerous. Normally, when ugly rumors start circling, the people who know you best rush in to defend you. A quick Instagram post, a tweet, maybe even a heartfelt interview where a co-star says, "She was nothing but lovely to me." That's the kind of support that can kill a scandal before it even starts. But in Meghan's case, that hasn't happened. Not one major Suits co-star, not one director, not even a longtime crew member has stepped up with a simple, "She was great to work with." Instead, crickets. And in Hollywood, silence isn't neutral, it's loud, it's uncomfortable. It's the kind of absence that makes people wonder if the rumors might actually be true. Fans noticed it right away. Online communities started combing through old interviews with Meghan's Suits castmates, watching for tiny slips, a pause before answering, an awkward laugh, even a side glance. Clips that once seemed harmless are now being replayed with a whole new meaning. A casual joke about Meghan always getting her way. At a 2014 panel, back then, it drew a laugh. Now it's treated like a breadcrumb, part of a bigger pattern. The silence has created a vacuum, and the internet hates a vacuum. So fans and critics alike have rushed to fill it, piecing together theories, memes, and timelines as if they're investigating a true crime case. Every micro-expression, every offhand comment is suddenly evidence in the trial of Meghan Markle's character. And that's what makes this moment so risky for her. Because sometimes, it's not the bold accusations that stick, it's the lack of defense. When the people who know you best don't speak up for you, the world starts writing its own version of the truth. And right now, that truth isn't looking good. If there's one thing Hollywood loves more than a big scandal, it's the small, petty details that sound too specific to ignore. And when it comes to Meghan's time on Suits, the internet has latched onto a handful of stories that refuse to die. Take the so-called chair incident, which fans quickly rebranded as Chairgate. According to Lady Colin Campbell, Meghan once found an extra sitting in her designated chair between takes. Instead of brushing it off, she allegedly leaned in with a pointed smile and said, "I think you're in the wrong seat, darling." Moments later, the chair was removed entirely. It wasn't the kind of behavior that made headlines back then, but when the story resurfaced, the internet went wild. Memes exploded across social media, and Chairgate became shorthand for diva behavior. Then there's the allegation about script changes. Supposedly, Meghan once grew uneasy after a fellow actor received too much praise during rehearsals. According to whispers, she quietly asked producers to adjust the lines. And when the episode aired, sure enough, the actor's scene was trimmed. Coincidence? Maybe. But once that story hit the web, fans couldn't stop asking, did Meghan really need the spotlight all to herself? And these aren't the only whispers. Stories have surfaced of production delays because she allegedly demanded lighting changes, of her tracking co-stars' social media engagement like it was a scoreboard, even of her dismissing crew members unless they were part of her trusted circle. None of it has been definitively proven, but that's not the point. The danger lies in the consistency. Each new claim sounds like a variation of the same theme, Meghan protecting her turf at all costs. That's why these anecdotes stick. They're not grand scandals or career-ending bombshells. They're small, almost trivial moments, but put together, they create a pattern. And in Hollywood, sometimes the tiniest details can be the most damning. On paper, Meghan Markle's post-royal brand is airtight. She's positioned herself as a champion of kindness, resilience, and empowerment. The woman who turned pain into purpose and used her platform to uplift others. Every podcast episode, every glossy magazine profile, every speech leans into that image. Empathetic, brave, authentic. It's the kind of branding that wins awards, lands Netflix deals, and secures standing ovations. But here's the catch. Branding only works if it lines up with reality. And that's where these resurfacing stories become dangerous. If Meghan really was running the Suits set like a private monarchy, if she was cutting scenes, rearranging scripts, and icing people out, then the brand she's selling today doesn't just look shaky, it looks hypocritical. Of course, there's always the argument that strong women get labeled as difficult in industries where men are celebrated for the same behavior. And in some cases, that's absolutely true. But critics point out that the Suits allegations aren't about leadership or assertiveness, they're about exclusion, manipulation, and a calculated creation of hierarchies, behaviors that don't line up with Meghan's messaging of inclusion and compassion. This is the tightrope Meghan now walks. On one side, she's the modern icon, speaking about empathy and empowerment. On the other, she's facing a growing archive of stories that paint her as cold, controlling, and power-hungry. And in Hollywood, contradictions don't just cause confusion, they erode credibility. Once audiences start doubting the sincerity of your message, everything you build on top of it begins to wobble. That's the danger Meghan faces now. It's not just about whether people believe the rumors, it's about whether they believe her. If there's one thing Meghan's critics don't have to worry about, it's running out of fuel. The internet has turned her alleged behavior into a never-ending content machine. Every story, every rumor, every awkward clip gets recycled, remixed, and amplified until it feels bigger than the original allegation. Meme accounts jumped on the Mean Girl label almost instantly. Screenshots of Rachel Zane, Meghan's Suits character, started circulating with sarcastic captions like Queen of Compassion or Lighting Check Commander. TikTok creators began piecing together old red carpet interviews, slowing them down to highlight side-eye glances or smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. On X, fans dissected panel appearances frame by frame, treating them like forensic evidence. Suddenly, Meghan's entire past was being replayed, but through a filter that made every move look calculated. And then came the PR pushback. Just as the memes were peaking, a glossy magazine article appeared, quoting unnamed friends who insisted Meghan was the most thoughtful person on set. They said she baked cookies, wrote thank you notes, and went out of her way to support her castmates. It was a picture-perfect rebuttal, maybe a little too perfect, because instead of silencing the rumors, it made people even more skeptical. Too many it felt curated, like patching bullet holes with glitter. That's the problem Meghan faces in today's culture. The more polished the defense, the less believable it looks. Audiences don't want press releases, they want authenticity. And when the internet senses that someone's image is being carefully staged, it doesn't reassure them. It makes them dig even harder for cracks, which means every denial, every counterstory, every carefully timed article doesn't just fight the narrative, it feeds it. When all the noise fades, sometimes what sticks isn't the stories themselves, but the label attached to them. And for Meghan, Lady Colin Campbell may have given her the most damaging label of all. Mean Girl, two simple words, but heavy enough to follow someone for an entire career. Because here's the truth, scandals can be spun, headlines can be corrected, and even major controversies eventually die down. But labels, they have a way of clinging on, even when the original story is forgotten. Just think of how Hollywood has branded certain actors for decades. The bad boy, the diva, the troublemaker. Whether fair or not, the nickname becomes the shorthand for everything that comes after. And right now, Meghan's shorthand is Mean Girl. The danger isn't just the memes or the viral tweets, it's the quiet signals, like a former crew member liking a critical post, or a co-star staying silent when asked about Meghan in interviews. On their own, these things don't prove anything, but together, they add weight to the narrative, and in today's culture, a single social media like can be louder than a full press release. That's what makes this so hard to shake. Meghan's brand is built on sincerity, empathy, and compassion. But once audiences begin to suspect that her kindness is more performance than reality, it doesn't just make her look unlikable, it makes her look strategic. And people resent feeling manipulated even more than they resent bad behavior. So now, every speech she gives, every project she launches, every interview she sits down for, all of it will be filtered through that label. The audience won't just be listening to her words, they'll be asking, is this real? Or is this another performance? And once doubt sets in, it's almost impossible to win everyone back. In Hollywood, image is currency. And if Mean Girl becomes Meghan's permanent headline, it may be the one thing no amount of PR glitter can cover. Meghan Markle's story has always been told as a journey of transformation. From actress to Duchess, from underdog to global figure, but what these resurfacing allegations do is force people to look backward, to question whether the version of her past that she's sold so carefully really matches the reality others remember. On one side is Meghan's polished brand, kindness, empowerment, resilience. On the other are the whispers from Suits, cold silences, power plays, and an inner circle that felt more like a royal court than a TV set. And the timing couldn't be worse. Suits is having a renaissance on streaming platforms, pulling in a brand new audience just as these old stories are gaining traction, which means every smirk on screen, every cutting line of dialogue, isn't just seen as Rachel Zane anymore. It's being reanalyzed as Meghan Markle, the actress behind her. And once people start blurring those lines, it's nearly impossible to separate them again. The irony is hard to miss. Meghan has spent years building herself up as a symbol of authenticity, of truth-telling in the face of scrutiny. But now, the very foundation of that message is being tested, because when fans start asking whether her compassion is real or just another performance, It doesn't just chip away at her brand, it reshapes it. So the question isn't whether Meghan can survive another wave of gossip. She's done that before. The real question is whether she can survive a label. Because scandals fade, rumors die, but labels stick. And if Lady C's Mean Girl tag continues to define her, it might not matter how many interviews she gives or how many glossy covers she lands. The audience may have already made up its mind. In an industry where perception is everything, Meghan now faces her toughest role yet, convincing the world that the story they've been told isn't the story that's true. The only problem, this time, she doesn't get to control the script.